Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Gwen Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening and welcome to the April 9th edition of Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Gwen Richardson, your host for tonight, along with my co-host,
Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Good evening, everyone.
And we have another amazing show tonight. And the highlight of the night is going to be our announcement of the finalists for this year's Black Authors Matter TV Awards in the 14 categories that we have designated. You all showed out with your voting, and we got over 1,000 votes. And so some of the people who accumulated the most, the top 5 in each category are the finalists, and we're going to announce them at the end of the show. We also have a book to give away tonight, and we have several announcements. But we're going to bring our first guest on and do that interview first, and then we'll do the announcements after that. So our first guest is Ashton Lattimore, and she is a lawyer by profession, I believe she said. And this is her first novel. And as you all know, historical fiction is my very favorite genre. And so when I saw that this book was going to be discussed on the show tonight, I ordered my copy. So I have a copy of All We Were Promised. It's by Ashton Lattimore. So Ashton, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And thank you for being here. We're happy to have you.
Okay, so you now you're the one, you used to be a lawyer, you said.
I was.
So you don't practice law at all anymore?
Nope, not anymore. I practiced for about 4 years before I sort of woke up one day and admitted, I don't like this very much. I would prefer to go back to writing. I was a journalist before I was a lawyer, and after I stopped practicing, I became a journalist again, and started my novel shortly thereafter. So I think, I always sort of had the writer bug, and it just took me a while to kind of step away from the law and let it be what it was going to be.
Well, so you truly pursued your first love.
Yes, absolutely. My first love. Yeah. I've been writing stories since I think like 5th grade when we first got our PC at home, with Windows 95 and all that kind of stuff. And I was printing out stories and giving them to my 5th grade teacher. Like it was a whole thing. So yes, I'm very much back to my roots now.
Yeah, a lot of writers start off in childhood writing. Mm-hmm. So that's very common. And then some get an epiphany later on in life, and it's therapeutic, or they have something to get off their chest, or they just decide they want to go in a different direction. But writing from childhood is very common among writers. And so I was writing in childhood too. I'm a writer as well. Both of us are writers as well as hosts of the show. So we understand the motivation behind it, the passion. Yes. The calling is really, a gift.
It is. It's a calling. It sticks with you. It really does. Yeah.
It does.
Well, it looks like the passion for research stuck with you. So being a lawyer takes a lot of writing. It takes a lot of research, and you kept all of that. Is that what helped you and drove you when you started writing your historical fiction novel?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have a huge, huge love for research. That's also something that's been with me since childhood. And it served me really well as a lawyer. And also as a journalist, you really have to like digging into the facts of things and finding out what happened and reading old documents and things like that. And I took such joy in that. And I've always found history so interesting. So I think when I decided I was going to write a novel, there was never any question that it was going to be historical fiction, because that's mostly what I read. And that sort of research process for me is like 2/3 of the fun, I think.
I understand. What was it that drove you to this particular subject that you wrote about? Not so much historical fiction, but the subject of your story.
So I first got the idea actually when I was working in Philadelphia. So I worked downtown. So the city's very historic. There are a lot of streets that look the same now as they looked like 200 years ago. So on my lunch break, I would often go and look around at historical sites and things like that. And I came across one, the President's House exhibit, which is down on Independence Mall. And it's where George Washington lived when it was the capital of the United States, when Philadelphia was the capital. And this exhibit is actually dedicated to the people he enslaved who worked in the president's house while he was president. And there's where I learned about this loophole in Pennsylvania's abolition law. They ended slavery very gradually, starting in like 1780. But the way that the law worked, it still allowed slave owners from other states to bring their slaves with them into the state for up to 6 months and keep them enslaved. And then what the slave owners were doing was taking them back and forth to kind of like reset the clock so that the slaves wouldn't end up free. And George Washington was one of the people who was doing this.
That's
So
a
I
lot
learned
of
that.
energy.
It is a lot of effort to keep people from having their freedom. You know, you get
Right.
to the
You
five
had
and a
to
half
really
month
work
mark.
hard to do that.
Yeah. They would get to the 5.5 month mark and be like, oh, I need you to run an errand to me, you know, back down to Virginia. Because they're not telling them why they're doing it, right? Because
Right.
they don't want them to know that this freedom is available to them. So when I learned about that law, I was just interested in figuring out how to craft a story that had that loophole kind of at the center of it. And that loophole was in effect up until I think it's 1847. So I was kind of boxed in to a particular time period. And I started learning more about Philadelphia during this time and how there were a lot of race riots that happened in the 1830s and 1840s. And that's why I eventually landed on 1837 and 1838, which were some of the more volatile years in that period.
Wow. You know, a lot of people always think that the northern states were more enlightened. And in some ways they were, but they had their issues during slavery and after slavery and after civil rights. I mean, they were, and still today, there's
Yeah,
not a lot of the most segregated cities are north of the Mason-Dixon line
exactly.
in terms of
Exactly.
residential.
Residential and educational too. Some of the most
Yeah,
segregated school
yeah.
systems, I think, are actually in New York State. But that's something that I kind of wanted to capture with this story, this sort of untold history of what it was like in the North to be a Black person before emancipation, before the Civil War, where you're technically free, but there are still a whole lot of people around who don't want you to be, and who are looking to make these compromises with the Southern states that, you know, really put your life and your freedom at stake, which is what was going on in Pennsylvania. You know, we kind of learn about it in history class. Pennsylvania is this haven for abolitionists. We've got the Quakers. Everything's all right here for Black people. And, you know, yeah, a little, but there was very much this other piece of the story that I was hoping to bring forward in this novel.
So tell us about the story itself, the characters, the plot line.
Sure. So the story centers on a young woman, Charlotte, who is a housemaid, and she was formerly enslaved and escaped from her plantation in Maryland with her father, who is this white passing tradesman who is now in Philadelphia, and he's passing for white. So she lives as his housemaid, and she befriends this wealthy abolitionist Black woman in Philadelphia. These are both young women, kind of coming of age, 19, 21 years old, and this wealthy abolitionist kind of gets her involved in these elevated social circles. So she's kind of rubbing shoulders with the Black elite and starting to begin to see what a new life for her could look like when this figure from her past shows up, Evie, who's this young girl who was enslaved on the plantation with her. And the two of them were like sisters who Charlotte left behind when she and her father ran from the plantation. And Evie shows up with, you know, a pretty deep sense of betrayal at having been left behind and basically demands, you know, I'm here with the plantation mistress now, but you're going to help me get free. You know, that's what you owe me after this. And it's the story of how these three young women work together to get Evie freed from slavery and, you know, discover for themselves what freedom really is going to look like for them in this northern city.
Okay, so
Wow,
this
it sounds
depiction
like
on the cover, it has
there it is.
the three women on
Mhm.
it. And I haven't delved into it yet because my to be read shelf is so it's expanded beyond the shelf. It's in a basket. It's on my
Oh
table.
no.
I have so many books, but it is in the queue. So it sounds like a very interesting story and a
Yeah,
little
with a
bit
lot of
different,
layers.
yeah, a lot of layers and a little bit different in terms of the angle that you took,
Mhm.
which, you have to, when you create a story, you have to have a plot.
Mhm.
And now your work as a lawyer helped you with what you were, the research you did for the book. Can you tell us about that,
Sure.
how your work as a lawyer? And were you still practicing law when you started writing the book?
No, I had just stopped about 6 months before I started writing the book. So it was all still in there. But
Okay.
I wasn't doing it day to day, but it was really helpful. Partially because of, what I was saying earlier about the 6 month law, this loophole. I needed to really get to the granular level of how this worked every day in practice. So a lot of what I ended up doing were reading old cases where enslaved people would like bring their enslavers before the court and say, I'm free because I've been up here 6 months. And the court would either say, yes, you are, or no, you're not, because there was some technicality or something like that. So reading a lot of cases, old cases, from like the 1830s and the late 18th century, about how this law worked in practice. So that was the biggest piece of sort of legal research that I needed to do around these issues. And then a lot of it was just sort of historical context and research. But having those tools from my legal background, kind of knowing how to navigate the libraries, how to navigate online resources, and all the other kind of places that I was able to look to find facts and details and sort of legal frameworks was really, it was useful. And it made me feel like I hadn't, put my law degree to waste, at least. I found a way to kind of craft something around it so I could say,
Right.
hey, mom, hey, dad, I got something out of this after all. It's okay.
So when you were doing your research and you're reading these old cases, did you find that the courts were more biased against the Black people? That's what
Yeah.
I thought. Was that something that you already had the expectation of as you went into that research, and it just kind of
Yeah.
solidified it for you?
I expected it. I expected it. The cases came out, I would say maybe like 70-30, with the 70 going to the enslaver, a number of times. There were some cases where judges were fairly sympathetic to what enslaved people were arguing, or where it was just a clear enough slam dunk case that there really was no argument. But in the cases where there was sort of a gray area, like, where somebody had been here 6 months and they were counting the months by the phases of the moon, but the court wanted to count them by the calendar date. So the court said, no, you're actually not free, little stuff like that. And it's a shame to think that it's kind of those tiny little details that would make the difference
Right.
between somebody being free or, potentially being enslaved for the rest of their life. But that's really how it worked back then.
Very sad.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So how were you able to, what form or the details of the court cases in for you to research? Was it
They
on
They were
book?
on some of them I think were in like the legal databases like LexisNexis and like Westlaw. You can go and read these really, really old cases, but a lot of them are so old that they're just available for free online, like outside of any databases. So there were a few articles by law professors where they had collected a lot of them, law professors who'd studied these issues. So they were just available kind of freely, and they took the form of judicial decisions. So it would be the judge's opinion and their decision at the end of the case on how it was going to come out. And they would recite all the facts of the case and then say, because of X, Y, and Z, this person's free or this person's not free. So it was all helpfully kind of laid out there just to pull from.
Okay,
So
because
did
I
you
don't
ever
think they
get
had court
surprised?
reporters back then.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, did you ever get surprised and like, they're not going to let this person go free? And they actually did. Did you
A
find
few
it?
times. Yeah. A few times. Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
what were the extenuating circumstances?
I think in one case, one of the extenuating circumstances was it was like a woman and her child, and it was something about where the child was born, like having been born maybe in Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania, after this gradual emancipation law. So I think maybe the child actually ended up free, and I can't remember if the mother ended up free as well, but it was something like that. It had something to do with kind of less with the 6-month piece of things and like what their status was under the law kind of to begin with, whether or not they were able to be considered free. Because what the gradual emancipation law did in Philadelphia was when it was passed in 1780, it didn't free anybody then, but what it did was say you are going to remain enslaved, but your children who are born to you will be indentured servants for I think a period of 25 to 28 years. And then they'll be freed and their children will be born free. So it's sort of the similar way, like in the South, where the status follows the mother, down from the mother to the child, whether they're enslaved or free. But it had this kind of extra period of indentured servitude in it to kind of complicate things a little bit. But that's how some of the court cases would turn.
I bet they framed that indentured servitude like it's only 28 years.
Oh, yes.
No, I'm
Yeah.
like 28 years. That's
No
a
big
whole
deal.
Right.
That's almost your whole life back
lifetime.
then.
I
I
You know.
mean,
mean, they were
people-
probably like, it's only 28 years and then you can go free and live your life.
Yeah.
Because the life expectancy back then was
Yep.
probably 50 years old. I mean, it wasn't people live to be 80 now, but back then they didn't for a variety of reasons, medical, you just didn't have the same health situation like we do now with medicine, and, medications. Or if somebody got hurt on like the farm, they could, cut something off and bleed out before, they could seek help. It's just all kinds of things.
All kinds of things. And you're working for this person who enslaved your mom. That's like your boss when you're an indentured servant. So, psychologically, it has to feel like a pretty bad situation, on top of just, the sheer amount of time and years that they kind of stole from people under this system of indentured servitude. And, that was another situation where people will kind of use it to their advantage, how much Black people or indentured servants knew or didn't know about the law, or even how old they were, or what year were they born? When is the 28 years up? Those are the kinds of things where people would kind of take advantage of their situation.
Of course, and with the 6-month clock, even with that, because the ability to read and write was so limited, I don't know if they could even read calendars. So that's why you were talking about the phases of the moon,
Exactly.
things like that. What they were using that to determine how long they had been there. So,
Yeah, it was not a situation that was set up to advantage us at all. Not in any way. But people did persevere through it, and some people did make their way through those loopholes. So people figured it out, but it wasn't easy by any stretch.
Now your book was just recently released, like about a week ago.
Yep, just a week ago.
So how has the reception been so far?
It's been really nice. It's been great. I spent last week doing a couple of events at some local bookstores. I live outside of Philly now. I live in Bryn Mawr. So I was doing some events in towns around here. And it was just really cool to get a chance to connect with readers and share with them the story, the research that went into it, and hopefully entice them to pick up the book. I saw a few people leaving the store, having bought the book, and I got to sign a few. So it was just a really nice introduction to kind of being an author. So I've been having a good time, and it seems like the book's been received well by the folks who have read it so far. So just hoping that it finds more readers.
Wonderful.
Congratulations.
I love a new book.
Me too. I think it's great. And you have some upcoming book events as well that you are working on. You have something this weekend?
Yes, I have something later this week. I'm going to be in conversation with a friend of mine in Rhode Island. That's going to be a Facebook Live event later this week. And then in May, there's an event in Morristown, New Jersey, where I'm going to be on a panel with other local authors, folks from the area, talking about all of our recently released books. So a few things coming up. Yeah.
Okay. Now I have another question about just that time period and with people. Pennsylvania seems to be a interesting state in terms of just, it was one of the early colonies. You have Philadelphia as the city of brotherly love. And then, but a lot of, I think Pennsylvania is like a pathway to Canada for a lot of people who escaped slavery. And then they were in Pennsylvania in Harriet Tubman. I know in the movie
Yep.
that was depicted there, and I think 12 Years a Slave, if I'm not mistaken, but I can't remember where he ended up when he was free. That was a hard movie to watch. It was just so.
It was. Yeah.
I've only seen it once. Some
Me too.
movies
Yeah.
once
Just
is
one
enough.
time is enough. Yeah.
Once is enough.
Yeah.
So,
There are some
but,
movies I just cannot watch more than once, and that's one
right.
of them.
That's
Yeah,
one
that's
of
one of them. It was just and it was accurate. That's that there were actual people that were, brutalized in that way.
yeah.
And but did a lot of people end up escaping, like that went for the 6 months?
Mhm.
Did they end up escaping? Did your research uncover any of that?
Yes, yeah, there are people who ended up escaping. And Pennsylvania, because it was basically the southernmost northern state, so it's right on the border with Maryland. Philadelphia in particular was a huge space for fugitive slaves where they would end up, whether they became free when they arrived, because of the 6-month law, or because, they ran from someone in another state, and ended up free that way. So Philadelphia really is like the birthplace of the Underground Railroad. So you have Harriet Tubman, who was here doing a lot of her work, William Still, who documented a lot of the early work of the Underground Railroad, who I think shows up in the movie Harriet as well, was based in Philadelphia. So part of the story is really seeing these characters and the historical figures around them, sowing the early seeds of the Underground Railroad. It wasn't being called that at this time. It starts getting called that, I think, sometime around the 1840s. But in 1837, 1838, you start seeing these committees. They're called vigilance committees, the Philadelphia Vigilance Committee. And they are groups of Black men in particular who are patrolling the streets, looking out for slave catchers to make sure that they're not snatching up free Black people or fugitive Black people off the streets. And they're also very quietly also helping enslaved people escape. So you have many of the wealthy abolitionists who worked and lived in Philadelphia would have these secret rooms in their houses to house enslaved people as sort of a way station for them to get further north.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
live in Maryland myself, and I know you probably know about the beautiful mural of Harriet Tubman, and depicts her. It looks like she's coming out of a brick wall, and she's standing there coaxing you to come on and be free. I mean, you can almost see her eyes following you as you're looking at that mural. But I love to drive out there and just spend time there.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And it was really exciting to kind of get to see and like through my research, understand what kind of framework she came into when she arrived in Philadelphia, what kind of infrastructure was already here and how it got there for her to kind of start doing the work that she was doing with the Underground Railroad and kind of going back and getting people and bringing them up through these kind of way stations. So it was an education for me. So it was really exciting.
Now, one of our regular viewers, Gwen Hayes, said she lives not far from Bryn Mawr.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I had a really good friend from years ago. We still keep in touch, but I met her when I was in college. She was older than me, but she went to Bryn Mawr. She didn't finish, but she went there, I think, for 2 years. And so she said it was very how did she describe it? Well, the wealthy women went there for the most wealthy white women. There's not too many Black people that went to Bryn Mawr. In fact, she's the only person I ever met that went there that I personally have met that went there.
Yeah.
Of all the people I met.
I
Well,
think
I'm
they've diversified somewhat in some, in recent decades, but I don't know how much.
She but it was a while back when she went.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you must have connected with Harriet's bookstore in Philadelphia.
Yes, yeah, I am in touch with them. I sent them a finished copy of the book as soon as it was ready last week, and I'm hoping to get out there sometime in the next few weeks to sign copies of the book if they have them there. But yes, love Harriet's bookstore.
Yes, we've had her on the show. And then what's the other one in Philadelphia? It's Uncle something.
Uncle Bobby's. Yep.
Uncle Bobby's. I always want to say Uncle Buddy. But anyway, yeah, that one too. That one is one, if you haven't connected with them, you
Yes.
should do that. Now, I have another question about that 6-month law. Was
Mhm.
that exclusive to Pennsylvania, or was it something that they adopted in other states?
As far as I know, it was just Pennsylvania, but I didn't end up doing research into the laws of other states. So it's possible that other states had something similar going on, but I can't say for sure. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of, Louisiana had the Code Noir, the Black Code.
Yes. Yep.
And so it kind of reminds me of that law.
Mhm.
So
I
yeah,
Yeah.
think they
right,
had
everybody
something
kind
in
of has.
Ohio. Seems like Ohio had something where
It's very possible.
they had, I think if you went there, I think they could return you to your slave
Yeah.
master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. A lot of states had laws like that, especially starting in the 1850s, like after the fugitive slave law shows up. That's a national kind of federal law. A lot of states would start having these laws where where the state would have to return you. And southern states also would have like almost the reverse of the 6-month law. That is one thing that I do know. Some southern states where if you were a free Black person and you came down to a southern state and stayed too long, you would
right.
lose. So it's like almost the inverse
Yeah.
in North and South. Yeah.
And I don't think it was 6 months. I think it was 30
Oh
days.
no, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't that
They
long. They
taking
didn't want,
chances now.
yeah, they didn't want too many of free Black people hanging around.
No, bad influences. That's,
Right. Yeah.
some other people would end up leaving, which of course they would. So, so anyway, Ashton, we want people to go out and get All We Were Promised. It
Yes.
just came out. It's historical fiction, and it sounds like a very good read. And I plan to read it myself.
Thank
So
you so
thank you
much.
for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much for having me.
And the link is in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. So please just scroll up, click on the link, and support this book. It sounds like an amazing read. So I'm looking forward to reading it myself.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, I did say I was going to be doing the announcements after this first interview. So I have several announcements. One is that the registration for the National Black Book Festival is open at the standard registration rate. So we're at 70% capacity as far as vendor space. So don't procrastinate if you do want to participate, because we will be selling out early this year. So we had a tremendous demand for space. So second, we have the Black Authors Matter Children's Book Awards process, which is ongoing, ends June 3rd. So if you have a children's book or you know someone with a children's book, feel free to submit it. You might be a winner. And we do in that, we have finalists in, I think we have 8 categories for the Children's Book Awards. And after the June 3rd deadline, the judges panel meets later in the month of June to evaluate and score the books that are submitted. So we have our book club kickback. Our first one of the year is a little bit later than we normally do, but we have Alyssa Cole, and she's a best-selling author. The book club kickback is May 21st. The name of the book is One of Us Knows. So if you're in a book club or want to read along with us, just put that on your calendar. The book doesn't come out until later this month, so it's not quite out yet. So we like to do the book club kickback about a month after the book is released to give people a chance to read the book. And we have a new t-shirt. We've had several t-shirts. So I wanted to show you the latest one that we have. This one is for science fiction authors, and I'm not wearing it, so I don't know if you'll be able to see it all. But anyway, it says Sci-Fi Sisters, and it has Octavia Butler, Tenenry Dew, and some other great science fiction women authors on it. It's very colorful and eye-catching, if you want. And if you want to get, we have a total of 6 shirts now, not just the Black Authors Matter. So if you want to look at what we have, go to cushcity.com, which is cushcity.com homepage, and you can see all of the t-shirts that we have. I did mention that we will be announcing the finalists for the Black Authors Matter TV Awards tonight, and that's at the end of the show in the 8:30 to 9 o'clock segment for those in Central Time, 9:30 to 10 for those on Eastern Time. So I did want to let you all know that the voting for the winners starts April 15th. So we'll have a nice video presentation with all the finalist pictures in it, and then you can start voting on the 15th of April. And I think that's Monday. Yes, that's Monday. And it goes to the 29th of April. So that's it. We do have a book to give away, but we'll do that after the end of the second interview. And so we have our second guest coming on. Her name is Tisha Brooks, and she is a college professor, and her book is called, and I think this is her first book, it's called Spirit Deep, Recovering the Sacred in Black Women's Travel. So that's an amazing topic. I don't know if the travel is spiritual or actual, but we'll find out. So, Tisha, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're welcome. Do you have a copy of your book handy?
I do.
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay, that's a thick, but turn that to the side. Oh, okay, textbook.
So,
there were just too many women I had to write about, so that's how I ended up so big.
That's a great segue into you telling us about the book. So, is this kind of are you giving us little snapshots of different women who've traveled throughout time?
Yes, I focused on, in the beginning, I focused on, I think there's 5 single individual women whose lives I follow in the book. And then there's also a film in here because I like to switch things up, and included a film that is actually looking at an entire community of Black men and women and thinking about how their journeys are influenced by spirituality and how their movements actually transform their spiritual practices.
Wow. You know, it's interesting. I'm actually reading a young lady I'm working with is working on a book, and she talked about her travels and how that shaped her beliefs and how she was also able to see the world through different lenses depending on the country that she went to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of what I'm hearing that may have happened in your book.
Absolutely. Space and location plays a big part in the book and how that shapes both the identities of these women, but also their spiritual practices as well.
Wow. So can you maybe tell us about one of the ladies that you spotlight?
Yeah, absolutely. So just so you have a sense of the scope of this, I actually start in a very unlikely place with a biblical narrative with Hagar. I don't know if you're familiar with Hagar in the book of Genesis. Yeah, I start with her because I'm really interested in all the many kinds of journeys she goes on. I think a lot of times she's just sort of defined as this woman in captivity, right? So her story is basically defined entirely by slavery, but there's so much more going on with her journeys. So she experiences exile, she experiences, escape. She actually runs away. She takes she is enslaved and held captive, but she also has a journey of return where she goes back to her homeland in Egypt. And so there's also a journey of liberation as well. And so I was really interested in all the different ways she moved throughout that narrative. And then I used that as a framework for thinking about the complexity of Black women's movements in later time periods. So I look at 3 Black women in the 19th century, Zilpha Elah, Amanda Berry Smith, and Nancy Prince. And then I look at a film in the 20th century, and I look at Saida Hartman's 2008 travel narrative, Lose Your Mother, because I'm interested in charting a legacy of Black women's travel, in part because I didn't see that represented culturally out in the world, even though I had a grandmother who traveled all over the world. And she created opportunities for me to travel. So I knew Black women were traveling. I just didn't get to see that anywhere. I didn't get to see it in stuff I was reading in school, and I didn't get to see it in magazines or anywhere else on TV. And so that's sort of what inspired the book, that, and then working with students in the classroom and hearing them talk about travel as though it's not for them. And so I wanted to make sure that this sort of fuller portrait of Black people's experiences and Black women's experiences is accessible for everyone.
Interesting. This an interesting angle that you took.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Something that I think most people don't think about. Although one thing, I had the same teacher, homeroom teacher, in 4th, 5th, and 7th grade. And she went around the world with I think she called it like the International Reading Association, back when Black people just didn't go places like that, you know. So she would come back from her trips and she would have slides. You know, she went to Holland, she went all over Europe, and then she went some other places. And but when she did it, she brought back with her some things, and she was teaching us things in the class. So she was teaching us French because she went to France.
Oh, I
and
love
she
it.
found
Great.
each of our names, the French version of each of our names, and we had cards on our desk with our French names, and we learned a few, you know, how to ask somebody, what's your name in French? And we responded. She was really ahead of her time. She was fearless. She really was. Miss I.B. Edwards, I mean, she was just an amazing teacher. But that was my real first exposure to Black people actually going places, like traveling. And
I
now it's
love
very
that.
common.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, it's much more common now. I think that's what fascinated me about the women in the 19th century, is that I wasn't expecting to see Black women traveling around the world in the 19th century, because we were just told everyone's enslaved, right? But they traveled all over Europe. Amanda Smith traveled all over Europe. Zilpha Elah traveled to England. Nancy Prince traveled to Russia and Jamaica. And actually, Amanda Berry Smith is the most traveled of all of them. She traveled also to India and different parts of Africa, Egypt, and Sierra Leone, and Liberia. And so they were just traveling the places you wouldn't think about Black women traveling to in the 19th century. And, they were also, traveling south and risking their lives. Because they could easily be enslaved, even though they were all free at the time that they were traveling south. They could be enslaved, and so they took a lot of risk, as you're saying, in moving through the world. Because one of the things that I think is really important about looking at travelers from the past is they remind us of the repetitions, that the dangers that Black people face as they move through the world today in public spaces, right? That those existed for these women as well. And so I'm interested in those repetitions and what we can learn from, the fact that this has never stopped us from moving and from traveling and from going wherever we want to go.
Okay, so is there a common thread, like among
there is
the women?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So one of the common threads, of course, is that vulnerability that they experience when they travel, regardless of where they're traveling to. They are facing threats, sometimes physical. And the interesting thing is, the narrative that we get about travel is that it's a pathway to freedom, right? That's why people leave the country, right? Because they can't be free here, so they go elsewhere to be free. But what their narratives show us is that they're still vulnerable when they're, abroad and in these international spaces. You've got some of them having to flee for their lives, Nancy Prince she flees Russia after she sees basically people being burned alive and flogged, after there's a revolt against the czar. And then she flees Jamaica after former slaveholders attack newly freed Jamaicans there, burning their property, their lands. And she is supportive of the newly freed Jamaicans there. So she ends up fleeing for her life from Jamaica. And so the recurring theme is that there is no, home out there in the world that just exists for Black people. That's probably the recurring theme, that if we want home, we have to create it. And so that's sort of what really inspires me about the women as well, as we see them doing what they can to create what one of the authors calls free territory. And wherever they are, they create that as a free space. And so I'm really interested in the ways that they do that, because I think that's something we still should be called to do today as well, right? We create freedom where we are, regardless of what the larger cultural space or landscape looks like.
It's kind of a sad sentiment that nowhere in the world can be called home.
Well, I think that the place that these women end up is that home is what you create, right? You have to create a home space for yourself and for others. You have to decide these are the boundaries that are sacred, and this is the space that's going to be home and that I'm going to protect.
Right.
And so that's really, I think, the space that they end up.
I was thinking about some of your background that you talked about in your bio, and a lot of your education has been in PWI settings. Most of it, I think, from what you described. And how does that inform your writing in terms of what you decide to focus on or where your interests are, if it does?
Well, I do think that the work I do now, which is about bringing Black women's voices and experiences and contributions to the forefront, grows out of that experience of feeling marginalized. And so I know what it's like to be in classrooms where, authors, Black authors are not being taught, where you're not reading them. And where if you are in a space where you're reading them, we've got students complaining about why do we have to read these authors? And that's sort of what influenced me to kind of go into higher education in the first place. It was like, well, we clearly need more Black teachers. And we need more Black books. So that was sort of the inspiration for me wanting to write and wanting to become a teacher in the first place, were the experiences I had in predominantly white classroom settings, and realizing the importance of having access to these texts, which I think has become even more important now that we see that the access is sort of being taken away in a lot of spaces. I think that work has become even more important today. So I'm really excited that we have spaces like this.
Interestingly enough, I went to a PWI myself. I went to Loyola University in New Orleans.
Okay.
And I was explaining this to a group over the weekend, that I actually I learned more about my culture and more about my history attending a PWI. One, because we had a very strong Black student union, and so we had a great sense of community. But we also had professors who were very unapologetic about teaching African American literature. I mean, we had a Harlem Renaissance class, and I learned so much about authors I had never heard of before. And I graduated from a Black university, from a Black high school. But when I went to this PWI and having the instructors that I had, they wanted to make sure that we understood our history, understood our culture, and not just understood it, but had an appreciation for it. And so I even talked with a friend of mine who was going to an HBCU, and he said he felt that we over at the PWI had more of an appreciation for our culture. We had more of a community, probably because there were less of us. And so even though there's cliques everywhere, we had a bit more of a community there, and we shared more, I believe, is what he said he saw. The difference being where we went versus where he went.
Yeah, I've actually heard that before. And I've been having ongoing conversations with my colleagues at my university about the number of Black focused courses we offer, because I teach at a PWI as well, and that it far exceeds what you would ever get at a HBCU. And so and part of that is we have students who demand to have classes that speak to their experience, because that is the only way that they get to be in a space that is affirming, really. And so it's interesting how that context of being kind of marginalized and minoritized leads you to create more of these courses and spaces that focus on Black culture and Black history and Black literature.
Absolutely, because we did demand those classes. We wanted those classes.
That's right. That's right.
And make sure they were filled.
Yeah.
And Rhonda was lucky, and Rhonda's younger than me too. But I went to Georgetown. So, and when I went, there wasn't any, it was nothing affirming. There was no African American anything. It's not studies. We did have we had, you know, the black student, the BSA. But what I found, is this interesting, something I found out years later, talking to an alumnus that was there before me, like 4 or 5 years before me. They had a very active group of Black people, but because they were so active and outspoken, Georgetown lowered the numbers.
Wow.
So by the time I was there, there was no, I mean, it was so, we didn't have any power. We had no power. We had a Black house. That was it. The BSA. We had a house we could go to on campus, but we were so spread out. When you said that you were the only Black person in your class, ditto. It was the only time I wasn't the only Black person in my class was if it was like 200 people in the class. Then there'd be 2 Black people. And normally they'd be on the other side of the room, and a lot of times you never did get to talk to them. So, so it was not affirming. You know, you were made to feel invisible, like you really didn't belong there. And we lost a lot of people along the way from the time I was a freshman to when I graduated. We had about 100 Black people when I was a freshman. And when I marched 4 years later, I think there were about 25 of them.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
We lost them to all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
nervous breakdowns, just flunking out, you know, just not financially, not being able to, you know, stay financially. Just, it was not affirming. So I'm glad. So now I also met somebody 10 years after, and it was better. So an alumnus that graduated 10 years after I did. It got better after it was more people, it got better. And they added, because when I was there, they didn't have fraternities or sororities. None of the Divine Nine were at Georgetown. And the year I graduated, they started a Q chapter. The year I graduated, I think they had 4 people on the line. But so they probably have it, you know, after that, they probably did. But it was not affirming at all. And it was, I experienced more racism at Georgetown than I had ever experienced in my life before that. And I went, you know, I was in North Carolina and Virginia. But it was not nice, I'll say that. But I did get a good education. I tell people I got a good education. I learned how to compete with the wealthy prep school type people, you know, academically and intellectually. So I learned how to do that. It was important. So, and it pushed me into entrepreneurship early on because I did not want to spend time in corporate America dealing with those people day after day after day, because that was who I was going to be working with in corporate if I went the corporate route. So I didn't.
Yeah, that makes me think about survival skills, the
Yeah.
things that enable us to survive in these spaces. And for me, that's sort of what Black books did for me, is they gave me a home, a space where I knew I belonged, and I knew that maybe the space that I was in was not affirming, but I knew that those spaces existed because I saw them in books. And so I think all the time about what Jacqueline Woodson says about books needing to be windows and mirrors for kids. You know, they need to be able to both see themselves reflected in the books, but they also need to be able to see the wider world, have access to a bigger world beyond their specific experience right now. And so that's what Black books have done for me.
And it's challenging. And your teachers, they're so vital to your educational experience. I had one Black professor at Georgetown. It changed my whole life there.
And that can happen. That was why I had an appreciation for the instructors that I had when I went to Loyola, because they were very unapologetic in making sure that we read Black authors. And
And
that's
that's
kind of what
great.
I wanted to ask you, Dr. Tisha, is I was looking at your author statement, and you said reading Black authors made you feel seen and less alone as you navigated spaces and places that weren't designated for you. And inspired by your favorite authors, Bell Hooks and Toni Morrison, two amazing authors, by the way, that you became an author to make visible the contributions, stories, and experiences of Black women who were often excluded from conversations about history, literature, religion, travel, and politics. And I feel like you did that with this book.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a mentor, because we're talking about, faculty members, teachers who really changed our lives. I had a mentor at my undergraduate institution. He knew I was going to get a good education, but I wasn't going to get the whole education I needed from the curriculum in the classroom. And so he basically gave me an underground education. And so he gave me a list of authors I needed to read and sent me to the library. And Bell Hooks was the first person on the list. And so, back in those days when there were actual stacks in the library, you would find one book and then you'd find a whole bunch in the same area. And so I would just sit in the stacks and read Bell Hooks. And I went through all of them. And so, yeah, I was amazed at just how young she was when she wrote Ain't I a Woman. That was so inspiring to think that she was, college age writing a book like that. So that was inspiring for me. And then Toni Morrison was inspiring for an entirely different reason. One of my favorite quotes by her is, she says, if you can't find the book you want to read, then write it.
Right.
And so, yeah, so they were
And
really
that's
the two sources of inspiration for believing that I could, be a writer.
They had a documentary about Toni Morrison that was in theaters, but I think it was like limited in theaters, and we had some tickets to go see the premiere of it, and it was before she passed.
Yeah.
When it seemed like it came out like a year before she passed, or not too long before she passed. And one thing, when she talked about somebody being excited or being driven by having their foot on somebody's neck, and what kind of person is that's what makes them feel good, is keeping somebody else down. She said it says more about the person that's feeling good about doing it than it does about the person that's the victim.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, that was a great documentary.
Yeah, she had a lot of profound statements, and I learned a lot about her. I didn't know she was an editor first. That's how I learned her backstory. I didn't know about that, and so I learned a lot about her. And her son wrote two amazing novels. And I can't call his name right now, just because we're having this conversation.
That's how it happened.
But he wrote two amazing. Standing at the Scratch Line was one of them. And if I can look up Standing at the Scratch Line and who authored it, and then he wrote a sequel to it, but I can't remember the title of the sequel. But two of the most amazing books I ever read. I mean, and that's all he did. He just wrote those two and stopped. I have to find his name because it's going to drive me nuts.
It's gonna bother her the rest of the night. She's gonna miss.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Tell me who it
is. While you're looking, I will tell you that Toni Morrison does make a feature in the book. I couldn't write this book without talking about Toni Morrison. I actually can't teach African American literature without talking about Toni Morrison and without having my students read something by her. She's that important, I think, for the tradition. But I think that I bring her in because one of the arguments she makes is that, her kind of calling as the Black woman writer is to really speak into the silences and gaps that she sees in history and in the past, and what's missing from the sort of the earlier works of African American writing. And so she really was always committed to moving the voices of Black women and Black girls to the center, from the margin to the center. And of course, that was Bell Hooks's argument as well, the need to move Black women from the margin to the center. And so that's what I really tried to do with this book.
It was Guy Johnson. I couldn't remember. So his first book was Standing at the Scratch Line, and then he wrote a sequel to it, and the sequel was called Echoes of a Distant Summer. And his books had really strong, they were historical fiction. They were both more like in the late 1800s in there.
Oh,
and I read them like 20 years ago. So, but he had very strong male characters. He had, you know, no nonsense. I'm not going to take your stuff. You know, he would shoot people. You know, he would do whatever it took to defend his and what was his, and to stand his own ground. And just amazing character. If you ever get a chance, they're very thick. They're both like 500 pages a piece, but they are really excellent books. And it's amazing that he you know, adopted her or inherited her writing abilities. He's just amazing. And I think he passed away too, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to call him dead if he's not, but it seems like I heard that he did.
Well, we did put your link in the chat. So I know the book has been out for about a year almost.
Yep.
Okay.
At the
So
one
do you
year
plan on writing
anniversary.
another one? I'm sorry.
At some point. I do. I've really enjoyed spending the past year talking about this book because it still excites me. It hasn't gotten old yet. But yeah, I do plan on writing another one. It'll probably be about leadership because that's sort of the space that I'm in right now. And I'm still thinking about Black women, and but this time a legacy of leadership wisdom that they offer us. I think that oftentimes we think we have to reinvent the wheel, and we've got this whole tradition of Black women who have come before us. Many of them didn't have titles, but they were leading, and they've offered us models for leadership that I think we can really draw from and learn a lot from. So that'll probably be the next project.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and you still have a lot of life in your current book, so there's no need to even rush. I mean, it sounds like, you know, you've been invited to speak in so many places on this subject, and it's taken you to a lot of different places. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, absolutely. It has lots of different audiences and communities have been interested in the book, which is what's been exciting. When I wrote it, I really wanted it to be more public facing, even though it's an academic book. And so I really love that there's been cross-generational interest and, you know, educational spaces, yes, but also just community spaces, church spaces have been interested in the book. So yeah, I think there's something for everyone in it. So yeah, that's been exciting.
Someone, one of the viewers, Brandon Brooks, said that The Pieces I Am, the Toni Morrison documentary, is on Netflix.
It sounds like you might know Brandon Brooks.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
I do, yeah. That would be my very supportive partner.
Okay. Wow, well, he's on it. He said the Toni Morrison documentary is on Netflix. So for those of you all who want to watch it, if you haven't seen it, or who want to rewatch it, just as a refresher to remind you of just how amazing she was, it's on Netflix. So, you know, go and enjoy it. So anyway, Tisha, thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV, and continued success with you and your writing and everything.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking with you.
It was great talking with you as well. Best wishes in all you're doing.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we said we had a book to give away, and then we're going to bring on our next guest. So the book we're giving away is called, this is an ARC, it's an advanced reading copy. It's called A Taste for More. It's by Phyllis R. Dixon, and it's not going to be released until June 25th. So this is the early version or edition of it before it gets released in bookstores. So you'll be among the first to read the book. And so we have a trivia question that we're going to put out there that we always do. Our trivia question for this book is, the main character's name is Margot. Margot becomes a business owner, and what type of business does Margot own? So the first person to answer this question wins a copy of the book. And so our next guest is Lasheera Lee. And I've been connected with Lasheera on social media and Facebook primarily for many, many years, going back and forth, just, watching what she's doing. And recently, I kept seeing how she was signing new clients to book deals. So I said, you know what? This is the time to pull the trigger to get Lasheera on the show. So I invited Lasheera to be on the show. And I'm not sure if she's an author too, and she'll tell us that. But she's here primarily to talk about, one, her agency work, and two, a major event she has that comes soon in August of this year in Raleigh, North Carolina. Then I found out that she lives in the small town that my mother was from, Mebane, North Carolina. It used to be like a tiny, tiny town, but now it's more like a outer suburb of Durham, I feel like. And so it's expanded. But Lasheera, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate you and your audience for having me. It's an awesome opportunity to share. And I have to give you your kudos because you have been so important in this industry, in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. And you always have been uplifting other authors and publishers and people of influence in the industry. So we'd like to give you your flowers, and we appreciate for all the work you've done that people don't even know you have done behind the scenes.
That's
Well,
beautiful.
thank you. I appreciate that. And sometimes things can be a labor of love. And one thing over the years that I've determined and I'm steadfast on, I have a principle. And my principle is that whatever I do is going to be professional. It's going to be, I'm not going to cut corners on professionalism. And so while a lot of times people will want me to do other kinds of things on social media, like doing TikTok videos and things like that, that's just not me. And so I'm going to stay in my lane because I'm not going to try to be something I'm not. I'm not even going there. It's, not that I'm interested in it anyway, but
Boy, I would love to see you dancing on a TikTok.
but
would
I
be
can't dance. I can't dance. Now I don't do these dances they're doing now. Some of this stuff that's being done now is really, really low-key porn. But at any rate, don't get me on that. So, Lasheera, how did you get involved in the book industry generally? And then how did you zero in on the work that you do?
Well, I've always been a bookie per se. So even as a child, I've always been an avid reader. So I don't know, maybe I say maybe like 15 years ago or so. I have a book club. I still do have a book club. We have a physical presence, of course. I have an online book club, but a physical book club. And I remember one day when I were gathering all the people who I knew in my circle who were avid readers, I said one day, this is no look, we had brunch one morning. I invited all these people, about like 15 women that I know, and we all knew each other. And I said, one day we're gonna have podcasts, we're gonna do I said we're gonna have book events, we're gonna write about books, we're gonna do all this stuff. And I was just spewing all this stuff, and everybody looked at me and I was like, where is this coming from? And and they were like, okay, you probably need something to eat. Just calm down.
Yeah, you're an oracle.
Yeah. and even afterwards, I was like, who said that? But over the course of the years, I have managed to do quite a bit of that. So I started off being like everybody's like virtual assistant, so to speak, because I knew a lot of authors. I used to show up at events, and then I would like give ideas, and they were like, hey, you want to help me with this? You want to help me with that? And I said, sure. So then it went from that to, of course, I wrote book reviews for RT at the time, Romantic Times, when they were still in print. Then from there, I started having my own local literary event where I wanted to mesh where I was living at that particular time. We had one of the highest illiteracy rates in the state. And so I was able to get a grant at that particular time, and I had different authors come in. I had different speakers come in. Several of the publishers were able to give away books. I had food, people donated food, and I did that for a couple of years. But where I was living currently, at that particular time, did not have a airport. So I had my husband and a couple of my husband and some of my husband's friends, some of my book club members' husbands, they would, we do like this we call it do like this whole book tour. They would drive from Danville, Virginia to Raleigh and pick up different authors and even readers. And we did that for a couple of years. And I was like, that's just way too much. So then look, really, my husband and all our husbands was like, okay, Lasheera, this is just too much. I'm gonna be honest. So then from there, I just started working with other different book club members, and I started working behind the scenes with a lot of different people. And so over the years, several authors have said, "Hey, you would be a good literary agent." I was like, "Oh, no, 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 that's way too much work." And then it went on for a couple of years, and then the agency or two had actually approached me. And I was like, oh no, I'm not ready. And so at the time when my youngest daughter, when she entered into college, she is an Aggie. She's a A&T. And I
Oh,
was like,
okay. My
yeah,
brother-in-law is an Aggie.
yay, we got so many connections. And so
We got so many people. We have so much because she's from Virginia too. Now Danville's like the west part of Virginia, right?
well,
It's
it's
more
actually like
west or the
maybe
mountains.
no, we're not in the mountains, but we're like maybe an hour from Ebbing. An hour from Ebbing.
Oh, okay. It's close
right
to
on the
the
line.
Okay.
Right in the line,
Okay.
yeah. You
Okay.
probably think it's closer toward Martinsville. And so from there, I just started to, I put my foot in the water, and I've been going ever since.
All
Wow.
right. So how many clients have you amassed since you decided to finally stick that pinky toe into the water?
I think right now I am at 32.
That's amazing.
32.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know you had that kind of a roster. That's amazing. So do you have certain genres that you
I
focus
have a
on?
plethora of romance. What I'm doing now is I'm trying to diversify my portfolio. So I'm looking for women fiction, maybe with some romantic elements. I do have several authors. I have sold maybe at this point, I think I've sold 6 thrillers, maybe five or 6 thrillers. So I'm looking for thrillers, historical fiction, and women's fiction.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
now
now everybody thinks that they're the next best thing. What exactly are you looking for? Because there's probably some women's fiction and thriller authors who are listening to you right now and say they're going to reach out to you.
Well, let me tell you, I just did I was fortunate and blessed enough to do a workshop at the Atlanta Writers Conference, and I also did a workshop this weekend on how to write query letters. So to be honest, and I told them, I receive a lot of queries of people who don't know exactly what they write. I receive a lot of messages, emails, Instagrams of people who aren't quite sure of what they write. So I implore people to do some research. So I like one day, and this is no lie, I received a query from my query tracker for a woman who said that she had a Christian fiction, erotica, sci-fi horror.
That's a lot.
I did not
The
read.
character cried one time, so that made it a Christian fiction.
I didn't even read the synopsis. I didn't read the query letter. I stopped right there. So a lot of times, like even in my workshops, sometimes I do assist authors in finding out, what really is the genre. Of course, you can have multi-genres. So sometimes you can have, of course, you have subgenres. But a lot of times people don't know what they're writing. So I always ask people to do their homework. So that's the first thing I would do. Ask people to do their homework. And, we talked about in the world of romance, things have really changed. Like right now, romanticy is harder than fish grease, and so romanticy is not paranormal. Some people think they're synonymous. So I always tell people to do their homework. This is your job in a sense, so do your homework. Just don't, just don't guess what you're writing. Do some homework, attend some workshops. Even if you can't go in person, a lot of time there's awesome virtual workshops that are online that can assist people, because if this is going to be your profession, then you need to take it as a professional and you need to do your homework.
Yes, and Rhonda does some of those online workshops.
Well, kudos to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't. So
we need you. We need you.
I
torch or whatever.
I tell people all the time, there's nothing wrong with getting into the literary industry to make money. Everybody should want to make money. But if it's your only driving force for being in the literary industry and you're not trying to perfect your craft, you're not trying to get better, you don't care how the book is, you just want to hurry up and get it out there so you can start making money, then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're also doing your readers a disservice.
Agree. I totally agree. And also hopping on every bandwagon, on every trend.
Yes.
And I do have authors who are very creative and they write all over in various spaces. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you have someone who said, oh, because romantic is so hot, so let me do this, but you may not be able to execute it as well, and so it comes off a little flat. Readers recognize that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're not really passionate, if it's something that you want to get into because you're excited about it and you're interested in it, and it's something that piques your curiosity, that's different. But trying to get into a certain genre, subgenre, or writing certain tropes or things of that nature just because you feel like, okay, this is the new hot thing, and you really don't do your homework, your research, and it falls flat, readers will know that. So I always tell people, just don't do something because of a new hot trend. Do something because you want to do it, because you have an interest in it, and it's something that you're passionate about.
Right. And if you can't write in that genre, meaning you don't have any experience writing, it doesn't matter if it's hot or popular. If you can't write it, then that's not for you. And I agree with you about bandwagons. Now, I think some people, well, there's a couple of things I like hear. You know how you hear stuff like chatter? Okay, one thing I hear about is people who are saying they're making all this money on Amazon writing books with no words in it. And I don't know what that looks like exactly.
Well, they're saying that they're making
journals.
workbooks.
Are they making journals?
Yeah, they're making workbooks and journals, maybe coloring books. I mean, which is fine if that's what they're going to stick with. But even if you're going to do that, make sure you do it well. It shouldn't be something that you just slap together.
Well, it's not a book, though. It's like
a book. It's just not. It's not the books we look at.
A journal is not a book.
Look, you don't give me a hot trouble here, so I'm gonna step out of that one.
But I think they call them low content. They call them low
content. Do. No, it's really no content, but everybody is a lot of people trying to get rich quick. And it's not just in books, it's in a lot of things. Everybody is a microwave society. And you might make some money for a minute, but if you're trying to build a career, it needs to be on a solid foundation.
Yeah, I will agree with that, because if you look at some of your most successful writers, and sometimes they may have a book or may have a product, because a lot of writers now have products, like book boxes or other things, branding, they're branding themselves. And they may have a book or a box or something or a product that doesn't hit the market as well as they have expected or they're not accustomed to. However, their true base stays loyal to them because they expect that stability from them and they can expect it. So I will say, and I often tell people, study some of the most successful writers, regardless of the genre, and you see how their customer base has remained loyal to them because they know that they can count on them. It's the consistency. It's not like, you had to have a book out every, like eight months, but they know that when that book comes out or that product comes out or that box come out, they can expect the consistency. And that's how I think you can breed sustainability in the industry.
Yeah, but too, these people have been writing for years. It's not a fly by night. It's not something they just walked into it. They might have been writing for 20 or 30 years or 10, but it's some years they've already put in. They paid their dues, so to speak. And so they built an audience a following, some people who know that if they buy their book, they're not going to be disappointed. Now, I want to ask you about this AI, because I think some people are going to, well, they probably have already started writing books using AI, just telling AI what they want to put in it. And have you encountered anything that seems like it was AI written yet?
I have not in my queries. I will tell you that I am not a proponent of that in writing in any way, shape, or form, because it is taking ideas from various established authors, people who have taken their time, their money, and their resources, and AI is generating an idea from their particular books. We all know that there was a great, and there still is that lawsuit that the Authors Guild is trying to win in court against AI, against a certain company. And it's been documented where several of our authors' works have been taken as a part of AI. So they are generating stories based on various authors. And so I think it's a great disservice. I think it's a travesty, if you will. And I don't know where it's going to end, but I do hope that it will end with these authors and various authors, their work not being allowed to be utilized and brutalized and plagiarized in that manner, because
Right.
that's what
It
it
is
comes down
plagiarism
to.
because AI is just
Plagiarism.
copying what's out there. It's not generating something
No
new.
idea. And that's the point where I think maybe not even maybe a year ago, a lot of people were upset that Amazon weren't allowing so many books to be uploaded per day. But the reason why, the rationale, is because they're trying to make sure that and it's hard to do, it's hard to police, but they're trying to diminish the amount of books that can be uploaded, and someone can upload, I hate to call the person an author, but a person who's using AI to generate content, they're trying to diminish the impact that they can have by not allowing so many books to be uploaded per day. Because what was happening, unfortunately, people who were utilizing AI and I guess become like very versed in it, they were using that content and they were uploading many books per day. And so when people were upset about it, they didn't understand that that's the rationale behind that. They were trying to diminish, that impact that it has.
I mean, the problem, it's all about abuse. I mean, because AI can be used to help an author in certain ways, but it should not be used to write your book. It should not be used to edit your book. I mean, there are certain things that there are sometimes when I'm looking for hashtags, or if I'm looking for SEO search terms, I might use AI for something like that. But I'm never going to take anything from
I'm
AI
not talking about in
and
that
adopt it as
reference, but I'm
myself.
talking about actually using it
No,
to
write a
write
whole
books.
book.
No, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are ways that authors can use AI to assist them, but it should never be used to take the place of you writing your own book.
Exactly.
And I can tell a Chat GPT story a mile away. Because a lot of times they write the same.
Flat. Yeah, and it's flat, and it's just like, it's pretty much the same story. It's the same verbiage. It's the same everything. And you can like, oh my gosh, it's just like a flat note, pretty much.
Right.
That's what it is. So
Yeah, it's insulting to the readers. And as a reader, if I read something and it seems to be that, one, I'm not going to keep reading. Two, that author, I will never read anything by them again. So whatever they think they're gaining from doing that, they actually, people who read can pick it up.
can
They
discern.
can detect it.
Yeah, they can. An avid reader knows.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Totally
Now, we
agree.
were talking a little earlier about things that you were looking for, and you said that a prospective author who might want to sign with you should understand their genre. They should do some research and know what type of writer they are. Because even when I'm watching American Idol, they say we need to know who you are as a singer. You need to know who this author is as a writer. So, but what are some other things that you're looking for?
Um,
Story originality, like maybe.
Well, I won't tell you the truth. I look for things that are outside of that too, because I believe all money is not good money. So I do look at what people put on social media, if I will. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, it's just true because
Can you give an
I feel
example,
like
not of
I
the
feel like
actual thing, but how?
I feel like, like I have a brand itself, and
Okay.
so if and everyone opinion is valued, everybody has their voice. But when people are constantly in drama or invest in drama, that wouldn't be someone that I would want to represent.
You don't want somebody cussing everybody out on Facebook and saying they want to sign with you.
Yeah. And that's just me. That's just me. Or you're constantly investing in drama, and you can see that somewhat play out on social media. And we all have our days and all have our moments. And there have probably been times where I have wanted to email. Have you ever sent that email? I call them nasty emails. And I have sent some, especially when I was in the school system. They were very professional, but you knew exactly what I meant. But then there's sometimes where Lord said, delete, backspace, 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 backspace. And I don't think that often we listen to their voice because we want to full hedge and do what we want to do and not actually practice what's in best the best principles. So yeah, I do look at that, and I'm not saying that I'm not judging anyone, and I'm not judging anyone, but I don't want to invest my time because being a agent is an investment, like the pitching, like the coaching. Often I coach my authors, or I may get on the line or get on the phone or get on a video chat, and I was like, okay, because sometimes I have a fine, it's supposed to be a line, but I'm always crossing the line. I'm like, okay, well, why about this? Well, think about this. Well, what's changed this, da, da, da. And so I don't want to invest the time and the energy in someone who I feel may not be teachable. And I think a lot of times your social media presence can tell me that.
That you're not teachable. Or it would be too much, take too much time.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what some people don't realize with an agent. You get paid when you sign a deal. And so you can't spend a lot of time that you don't think will bear fruit.
Exactly, because it is a lot of times, sometimes you can work on a deal. Like I have worked on deals sometimes for months.
Right.
Before, literally for months, negotiating, looking at contracts, going back and forth, especially like with subcontracts, translation deals. I remember that there was one contract I went back and forth because it wasn't a new country or a new company rather, but it was a new company to my agency. I had to go back and forth. I don't like this, da 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 da. And that took two months before the negotiations began. So,
Okay.
so you imagine you doing that, and it's just it's a lot of time. People have no idea. It's a lot of time.
Yeah. So you have to pick your clients wisely.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like a marriage, and I may not be a good fit for everyone, and that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, so you have to, like, I usually do an interview, like, okay, what are you looking for? What I'm looking for? What do you know about a literary agent? Sometimes people aren't they're not knowledgeable of what an agent does. Like sometimes people think it's like a PR job. Like, no, and sometimes it's hard for me because I have done PR in the past and I still do some of that, and I have to manage myself like, oh, I can't do that because I'm not a PR. I'm the agent over here. I got my agent hat on. So it's a lot of different things, and people aren't knowledgeable of what an agent does. So there you answer a lot of questions about, okay, this is what we do, this is what we don't do, da 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 da. And it's unfortunate because evidently must be a lot of like hypocrisy or some like scamming going on, because I feel like 2 or 3 people asked me how much would I charge to be the agent. And I was like, what?
Yeah. See, yeah.
I
There is some
said,
scamming
no,
going
no,
on.
no. And I
No,
said, I don't do that. And I told them, and I said, I don't want to know any names. I don't want to know any names, but anyone who approaches you or after you approach them and they say, hey, I'll be your agent for a certain amount of money, you need to run,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of education going on.
Yeah. It's a
yeah,
lot. And
unfortunately, people don't always understand the terms. I mean, I
Right.
remember somebody in a Facebook group saying, something about how many of you will want a publicist? And the responses that she was getting could tell that they didn't know what a publicist was, and they didn't know the difference between a publicist and an agent. People were saying, I need a publicist because I need a 5-figure deal, or I need a 4-figure. That's not what the publicist gonna do for you.
Yeah.
Or they have one book that's basically their memoir, and they're really not well versed as being an author. And they say, I want to get a publicist because I want to be on Good Morning America. Okay, well, you're not going to be on there. That's just not the way any of that works. And so, and do you have a product that would even be considered by Good
Marketable.
Morning America?
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, and sometimes even as an agent, you have to have those hard conversations about book sales and things that nature when it comes to various deals and various opportunities. Because it is a data-driven market. So so when people are looking for various deals, I don't care if it's audio or like a lot of people want distribution deals or now print deals from old ebooks, or they want sub deals like translation deals. Everyone looks at data.
Yeah.
Everyone looks at data. So sometimes you have to have those hard conversations or say, how can we remarket this or things of that nature as well. But yeah, you have to have those hard conversations.
One thing I don't do is refer people to agents. I did it once and it worked, but I only did it the once. And I'll tell you who it is, because he doesn't mind me telling people. But Brian W. Smith asked me, and Brian was hustling. Brian was hustling his books when he was independent, and I saw him hustle his books.
If
that's what is required.
If these trees could talk.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books by him.
And I referred him to Maxine Thompson, who passed away about a year ago. Did you know Maxine?
I didn't know her, but I've heard her, and she's been well respected in the industry.
Well respected. And she got him a book deal. I mean, it was pretty fast. But that's the only time I've ever done it. And the reason I don't is because I tell people, if I refer, first of all, I don't know if the book is even good. And so I can't refer. And if I refer you, because I've been in the industry so long, the person's going to they're going to pay attention to it. Good. And then it can make me look like just totally ridiculous. So, so I don't do it. What I do at the festival, like we have a seminar by an agent, and they talk about agency work. And if they want to sign them, if they want to talk to that person, or if it's a panel of two, like last year we had 2 people, but they can do that. I give them access to agents at the festival, but I don't do
awesome. And that's that's awesome, because a lot of times, sometimes like African American writers and marginalized writers don't have the opportunity to attend some of the workshops where they can have access to agents or editors, or even have like an educational component.
Right.
So that is awesome, because people perish for lack of knowledge, and sometimes it's not like they don't have the passion, but they don't have the bandwidth, but they don't have the access. They don't have the access. So that's awesome. You could be once again, you to be commended.
Well, like you said, people perish for a lack of knowledge. So I tell people, if you come to the festival, there's so much free information in these seminars and access to industry professionals that really, if you're serious, you'll be there.
About your craft.
So if you're serious, and if not, then that's on you. But am I gonna let you call me and pick my brain or let me show you the facts of life. No, absolutely not.
And you know what? I
They
used to do that. I used to do that, but people will wear you out.
Yes,
And
they will
sometimes
wear you out.
intentionally, but they don't realize, like when they message you, they're not the only person messaging you. So you can get like 5 messages, 5 emails, and maybe a text message, and you trying to figure out how in the world you get this. But and so they don't realize that. Well, I just want to ask you, like, I just want to consult you 15 minutes, but I may have like eight of those messages for the day,
Right, right. And time is money.
Yeah.
And when you're a professional, your time is money. And it's really insulting to not respect that with people who've been in the profession. I don't believe in free services, free professional services, period. Because I don't give my time away. And so I don't expect somebody else to give away their time. So I have two quick questions because we're at the end of our segment.
Oh my
We
goodness.
announce our
This is
finalists.
like being there like a kitchen table with some of your best friends.
That's what we want. It's a conversation, but it's informative. It informs people. So now, if somebody is an indie published author and they're trying to get a book deal with a publisher, what would you suggest they do?
Well, first of all, I will tell them to look at the data, understand like the querying process, understand what a proposal looks like. What's a query letter? What's a synopsis? A synopsis is not a blurb. They're not synonymous. What's a hook? Good look. I just actually taught this at RWA Saturday, so I did a whole 1 hour workshop. But anyway, so this is fresh in my mind. What's a hook? How should it end? How does my social media look? What's my digital imprint? Because those are questions. Some publishers aren't interested. Some publishers are. It depends on what you're trying to do. What kind of deal are you trying to get? What's your genre? What's your genres? There's so much in that. That's a loaded question.
Okay. Well, you answered some of it. So we're at the end. Rhonda, did you have a final question?
No, I'm just saying, I like that you pointed out that a synopsis is not a blurb.
Yeah, a lot of people
think that they're writing a synopsis not to a prospective reader, but to a publisher, and they'll say something like, "You'll have to read to the end to see what happens next." The publisher's going to put that down.
In file 13. In file 13. Most
right. File 13.
Yeah, and then also knowing to outline, because a lot of times when you come from the indie space, I know my time is up, but come from the indie space, people are accustomed to writing as will. But if you want a book deal, and if you don't have like a history, and you may have a phenomenal history as an indie writer, but that doesn't necessarily transfer to the traditional space. So you're going to have to prove yourself in that space, and you're going to have to understand that too. And sometimes they can be a difficult transition for people. So knowing like you're going to have their proposal, you're going to have to outline it out, and you're going to have to, if you don't have a full manuscript, you're going to have something. You're going to have to have several chapters at least. Some people may want to have, some people may want at least 3 to 4. So that's another process that you have to get accustomed to. So you have to, like when I was teaching my students, you have to like retrain your thought process for a moment, and so then you have to really ask yourself, is this something that I really want? Is this something that I want? Because you're going to have to do several things that you have not been accustomed to doing. So you need to ask yourself, and it's fine if you don't want that. It's fine, and maybe the traditional space is not, it's not for everyone, and it's fine.
Right.
It really is. But if you do want to go into
point that out, I think a lot of authors say that they want to be published, they want to have a traditional publisher, but often, and I've had a traditional publisher before, and sometimes that schedule is not going to work for them.
It doesn't work for everyone.
When my publisher told me that I need this book by December 31st, guess what I was doing on New Year's Eve instead of going to a party? Right. Yeah. So we have to realize that, we don't have as much flexibility when we are working with a traditional publisher. And I think people really need to understand that. Really think about what's best for you. Maybe being an independent author is not best for you because you don't have time to be running to the post office every time somebody orders your book. People want to keep all the money for themselves. I'm not going to Amazon because I want my money to myself. Well, that means you're gonna be going to the post office every time somebody orders a book. Do you have time to do that? Do you have the space to have 1,000 books sitting in your garage or in your storage room or in your living room while you're waiting to sell books? So sometimes you have to really weigh the options and see what works best for
And
you.
I always tell people, you find the best model for you. And just because you see another person or your book buddy or your colleague doing something, that doesn't mean that it's the best fit for you. And you know what? It is okay. It is
Right,
exactly okay. Because I
right.
think sometimes and I want to say social media, I know we're all grown, but social media does play a part of that. And you see certain things on social media and you think, oh my gosh, this is what I should be doing. This is what I should be doing. But you know what? Do what's best for you.
Yes.
Exactly. That's why I said some of this stuff I see people doing, and it's just I'm never gonna do it. So,
Mhm.
and I'm fine with it. I've been able to build a lot doing it the way I do it. So why should I? I want to perfect it and just keep it going in a professional, like keep it professional. Everything will be that way. So anyway, Lasheera, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do it?
I'm closing down my query manager because I have been overwhelmed with queries. However, you can still email me at lasheera@sbrmedia.com. That's
Okay.
LASHEERA@sbrmedia.com.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we got a chance to meet virtually. We've never met in person,
Yes, I
but
know.
or even had a conversation. So this was great, and I hope I know it informed some people. And if they had ears to hear, let them hear. So, um,
Amen.
you have a great evening, and thanks so
So,
much for
Miss
being
Ladies,
on
and
Black
thank you
Authors
so
Matter
much for the
TV.
invitation.
It was
Awesome
great to meet
conversation, ladies.
you.
You're welcome.
See you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Good night.
So, we gave away the book. It was won by Curtis Stevenson. And Curtis, your book will be on its way to you. And so next we're announcing the finalists for the Black Authors Matter TV Awards. And it's always a very exciting time of year because people get the recognition from their fans. The results are not always obvious because the winners are not necessarily based on name ID. And we find that every year in each category. And neither are the finalists. Sometimes the finalists are not either. So it's about having support. It's about asking your supporters to support you. Some people are shy or they don't want to do that, but it's a great time. And the actual awards, that's one thing I wanted to say. The voting starts Monday for the winners. After we announce these finalists, they'll all be on a ballot, and the voting for them starts Monday, and then it ends on the 29th of this month. That'll be the last day of voting, and the awards night is May 14th. So we always have a fabulous night for the awards. So we're going to start with we're going to do it by category and just name all the people, and Rhonda and I will take turns. So I'm going to go first with biography memoir, and the finalists in the biography memoir category are Denise Billings, Rich Gilliam, Ralph Hawthorne, Cassandra Jackson, and Dr. Laverne Ford Wimberly. So congratulations to the biography memoir finalists. And so, Rhonda, you're next.
Next up is the children's category. We have LaRonda Crosby Johnson, Tasha Dawson, Rich Holly, Burnett Nettles, and Derek Washington.
And I know Derek was at your event, wasn't he?
Absolutely, Derek Jacoby Washington.
Okay, yeah, he was at your event, and he was one of the finalists or winners. I can't remember if he won or not, but for the Black Authors Matter Children's Book Awards last year, he was one
Oh,
of the finalists for that. So okay, so moving right along, our next category is Christian fiction / religious faith. And sometimes the categories will be different, slightly different, based on the accumulation of guests we've had in the last year. So we have to have at least 6 people per category because there are only 5 finalists. So if one that we had last year doesn't have enough, then we'll combine them sometimes. And so that's what we did this year because we didn't have enough to have 2 separate categories for Christian fiction and religious faith. So we put all that together. So the 5 finalists for that category are Vanessa Miller, Gloria Shell Mitchell, Henry Razor, Natasha Smith, and Michelle Stimson. So congratulations to those people. And the next category is Rhonda's going to do.
Moving right along to comic books, graphic novels, poetry, and young adult fiction. We have Nikki T. Anthony, Pamela Harris, Chandra Sparks Blonde, Deborah Thompson, and Crystal Wilkinson.
So congratulations. Those are 4. I think we had those 4 categories combined last year too.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough in each of those individual categories. So congratulations to those people who were finalists in that category. And some people are, if they've been on the show more than once over, the years we've had the show, when you have a long running show, sometimes you have repeat guests. And so some of the finalists were finalists in previous award processes. So, and some may have even won. So next we're doing historical fiction. So, this is one of my favorite genres. So, and this category has a very solid group of finalists. So, in historical fiction, Cheryl A. Head, Donna Hill, Angela Jackson Brown, Vanessa Riley, and Rashonda Tate.
All right, well, moving over to history. Yeah, moving over to history, we have Tara Bynum, Tanisha Ford, Kevin Hazard, Sherry L. Smith, and Elizabeth Wine. They were co-authors.
Mhm.
And we had Dr. Karita Williams and Charlie Palmer, who were also co-authors.
Right. And they both appeared on the show together, both
Yes.
sets of those. And I think Karita Williams and Charlie Palmer, I think they won an Image Award. I think Tanisha Ford did too, if I'm not mistaken. I think they both were winners. I had to read them. Winners. Yes, they both won Image Awards this year. So congratulations to them again. I guess when you got stuff going, you get accolades everywhere. And for historical fiction, one thing I did want to say is Donna Hill and Rashonda Tate, they're not really historical fiction authors historically, but they were on the show discussing their historical fiction books. And so that's why they're in those categories. So next we have horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and urban fiction. Those are together. And so the finalists in that category are Tananarive Due, Kwan, Danielle Marcus, Joy Sanchez Taylor, and Omar Scott.
These are going to be some tough categories, I can tell you now. Moving on to mainstream fiction and women's fiction. We have Phyllis Dixon, Candace Y. Johnson, Terrace Marie, Mary Monroe, and Tanisha Stewart.
Okay. And Henry Razor, who was a finalist for I think he was in the Christian category. He's watching, so he said yay on the comments. And so congratulations on that front. And we've had several authors from BK Royston Publishing, from Black Odyssey Media, and from She Publishing, LLC. And several of them are among the finalists. So, and that's really great that they are up and coming publishers, and we're able to help get exposure for their authors, and then they end up being finalists. So I think Henry Razor was through She Publishing, if I'm not mistaken, but it could have been BK.
Yes, he is.
Is it she? Okay. All right. So, okay, next category is motivational, inspirational. The finalists are Melanie Benita, Dee Devon, Royce Dixon Sr., Elisha Newton, and Devin Robbins. So those are the motivational, inspirational guests that were on the show.
Okay, moving on to mystery, thriller, and crime fiction. We have Carolyn Mitchell Boykin, Eddie Clark, Tracy Clark, Terry Keys, and Eric LaSalle.
Okay, those are all, you know, all the authors are good, of course. Some finalist categories don't have really multi-published authors in them. And so that's mystery and thriller and crime fiction. That's my second favorite category. So like historical fiction is my favorite, and then mystery thriller is my second. And let's see. Deborah Thompson commented she was a finalist also. And Julia, she said BK Royston Publishing. I'm not sure she was saying one of the authors was from that or not. But at any rate, we're going to move to the next category. And it is nonfiction. So nonfiction finalists for this year are Bonnie Newman Davis, Antonius Finch, Marita Golden, Renee Johnson, and Nicole A. Taylor. Congratulations to all of you.
Moving on to romance. All right, romance. Rita Gordon, B. Love, Rhonda McKnight, Angela Seals, Sherelle Green, and Cheryl Lister, and Jacqueline Thomas. The Angela Seals, Sherelle Green, and Cheryl Lister were co-authors.
Right. They were, they did that project, The Bays of Juneteenth.
Yes.
Where there were a bunch of authors, but they were the three who were on the show to talk about it. And that was a really interesting project. So next we have bookstores. And the bookstores that made the finalist list are Katrina Brooks with Black Pearl Books, Janelle Brown with Brown Books and More, Amber Collins with The Soul Book Nook, Cheryl Lee, 44th and 3rd Bookseller, and Trinessa Williams, Kizzy's Books and More.
All right, now moving on to our final category, book industry support. We have one of our longtime supporters, Tony Bonita, with the PWOC Book Club. We have Shanitha Burton with She Publishing, also another all of these people are longtime supporters of the show. Veronica N. Chapman, the Black Children's Book Week. Entice with Black Odyssey Media, and Joy Lynn Ross with PTP Publishing. Congratulations to everyone.
Congratulations. You know, Joy Lynn was on our very first show.
She sure was.
She was one. I think the first show had. It was me. It was you and her, and it was a guy, Belinda Mays, the children's author, and then I can't call his name, Rogers. D.T. Rogers or D.K. Rogers, something like
You
that.
have a memory like an elephant, boy.
But you know, I booked the guests, so that helps reinforce it in my mind. Then I send the information to the graphics person, my graphic designer, so she can do the flyer. And then I have to send the flyer to the guest. So it helps reinforce the names.
Right.
But I can't remember all 600. And you know, I've started to do reels. I don't know if you've seen them on our Facebook page. I've started to create reels with some of our previous interviews.
Right.
And so I get to go back and look at some of them, not the whole interview, but enough to create a reel with, and then to get people to watch them. And some of them, when I get to them, I'm like, okay, I don't remember this person. What was it? But then when I watch it, then I remember. When it starts, then I remember they were. So it's we have talked to a lot of people. We've talked to just about everybody in the African American book industry.
Yep.
That's a mover shaker after 600 and something people. And we'll get to 700 at some point. I'm thinking we probably will get to 700 around festival time, somewhere in September. We'll cross the 700 mark. And this is 700 different people. So we've already talked to over 600 different people, and some of them multiple times. But we're moving right along. And, you know, we have approaching 96,000 people on our Facebook page for the festival as far as our followers. So we
We
gain.
have to do something special when we get to 100,000.
Oh, yeah, I am. I don't know. I might have a party. Somewhere, somehow. Well, see, the problem is we're talking to people all over the United States. It's hard to have a party and include them. I would have to figure out something creative. But yeah, I am waiting with bated breath for the 100 to cross that 100,000 mark. It'll be this year. I just don't know when, but I'm excited about that. And we've been able to do it and keep everything above board and professional, and make all the guests feel like their work is well represented. And so
Absolutely.
Yeah, we haven't gone down any celebrity roads or trying to punk anybody or try to throw shade on people. You know, we don't deal with gossip, although we might say a little something every now and then. But we just try to make every person's work shine when they're on the show.
And it should. I mean, the purpose of this show isn't to shame anybody or to argue with anybody. We want to make everybody feel special. This is their time to promote their work or their bookstore or their nonprofit or whatever it is that has to do with the literary industry. And we want to be supportive of that, because a lot of times they're dedicated readers, their audience comes on to hear them speak. And what would we look like to try to shame them in front of those people?
That's true. And they gain new readers by being on the show, or new supporters for whatever they're doing, because we don't only have authors. We're not an exclusive author show, although it is Black Authors Matter TV, but it takes more than just the writers to make this industry work. It takes the synergy of all of these different moving parts. And so we're really happy about what we do. And that's one reason why we started the awards the first year of the show, to continue to celebrate the people who were on the show and give their supporters a chance to support them in a public way to raise their profile even more. So I'm going to just look at a couple of the comments before we say goodnight. And She Publishing said, congratulations, everybody. She had several people from her roster that were finalists, as well as BK Royston Publishing. And Tony Bonita said, wow, thank you. She didn't know she was going to be a finalist, although she should know because
you should know what's up with that.
she's everywhere. In books. She's doing all kinds. She's on it, and she's very supportive of the authors. Vernette Nettles and Deborah Thompson are with BK Royston Publishing. That's what Deborah said. And Curtis Stevenson said a lot of these categories are going to be tough to pick a winner. And he's gotten books for just about everyone.
I know you can almost do eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and you're still gonna pick a winner.
Right.
I'm so good.
He has gotten some books in the last year, especially. Let's see who else has. Oh, Dr. Laverne Ford Wimberly said thank you and congratulations to all. And LaRonda Crosby Johnson, she was a finalist in the children's category. She also said congratulations to all. So because we're done with naming the finalists, we're going to end the show a few minutes early tonight, but we'll be back next week with another amazing episode of Black Authors Matter TV. So, Rhonda, did you have anything you wanted to say in closing?
I just want to congratulate the authors once again. I've been reading a lot of your books, and I've also been giving the books to the kids. When I say kids, I'm talking they're younger than me. They're in their 20s. But I give the books to them and have them read it, and they always come back and say, oh, that book was so good. I need another book now. So this is the great thing about this show, is just being able to be exposed to so many great authors that I may not have met before. So congratulations to you. Keep uplifting the literary industry. Keep writing these great books, because there's somebody who's watching you guys, and there's somebody who's learning how to write, and somebody's gaining a better appreciation for reading because of your work. So keep it up. You're affecting the next generation, and that's a beautiful thing.
Okay. Well, having said that, we're out for tonight, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another episode of Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Gwen Richardson signing off.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Have a wonderful evening and a great week.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.